the sheer size of the country. You look at England, you may hate the team 30 miles down the road, but they're in a different division. FA Cup is the only chance you get to go down 30 miles down the road and just show those so-and-sos what's what.
Right.
The Open Cup, I mean, everybody's, kind of thrown. It's not like Sporting have a huge hate on for, let's say they played, of course, they only played MLS teams, I think, this time around. But back when they were playing Minnesota United, when Minnesota United was in NASL, it wasn't like they had this massive hate on for Minneapolis. I mean, you got to drive 5.5 hours to hate on somebody. Most people aren't that fired up. So you only find something like that, in New York, where the Cosmos are trying to make a name for themselves, something like that. But the country's just so big, so you don't have the geographical hatreds and rivalries is one thing. And I think the idea of the draw, as opposed to that they have in other places where you draw your next opponent every time. Here it's geographic, so you know who you're going to play. There's not so much quite the event of sitting around waiting to find out, okay, who do we draw in the next round? So you pretty much have your path laid out, which I'm not a huge fan of that geographic layout, because what if the two best teams that take it the most seriously are both on the west side of the country or both on the east side of the country? But I think the run of FC Cincinnati, the run of Miami FC were both very good for the Cup this year. A couple years ago, if you remember, Cal FC stunned Portland. And then you had Christos, the team that I think you start getting stories like that. The Cup is going to get more recognition that way because everybody loves an underdog story. This is America. Everybody loves an underdog story. And I think you look at the final here. You've seen how Dallas took it. You've seen how Seattle has had success in the Open Cup this decade. I think there are clubs that are kind of driving that. And I think that as more clubs maybe see the importance of it as helping your club gain a successful mindset, I think you're going to see more clubs taking it seriously. You look at the Red Bulls, they didn't take it seriously until Jesse Marsh became the manager. Why did he take it seriously? Because he was in Chicago, and they used to own the Open Cup. So a lot of it just depends on the philosophy of the coach. LA, another team that still is historically not taking the Open Cup super seriously. And it being a flagship, I want to say a marquee team, maybe in MLS, it would help if the marquee team sort of took more of an interest in it. I think Seattle's interest helps a lot. But I still think it's got a long way to go. It's come a long way, too, though. I was, as I said, I was at that 04 Open Cup at Arrowhead in Kansas City. Seats 80,000, and I was one of 8,819 people in the stands. And it scored the golden goal. I look around for somebody to high five, and there's nobody within 3 rows. So it's grown. Yeah. It's grown quite a bit.
Absolutely, Steve. I 100% agree with those regionalized pairings. It seems like every single year Dallas or KC will play each other, or Houston and Dallas will play. It's like the same preset opponents. I really just don't like that. I want to see play some other team, or maybe have the round where the MLS teams enter, have the MLS teams play on the road against those NASL or USL sides.
Sure, anything to kind of bump up the excitement factor. And they recently, not all that long ago, they still had to go across country sometimes, because when Sporting won in 2012, they went through Orlando City.
Right.
Of course, at that time, Sporting were in the Eastern Conference of MLS, but it was a little bit different from just playing the same Midwestern teams all over and over again. So here, who you're going to get. You're going to get maybe Oklahoma City or Dallas or Houston, Colorado. You're going to get everybody pretty much west of the Mississippi. That's your pool. Mm-hmm. And I get that for the smaller teams, but once you get into USL or the NASL, you can afford to travel. And especially for a one-off, because if you draw, you don't go back to the other guy's place like you do here. I mean, like you do in England. So, if you draw, you don't have to go all the way from LA to New England. I just would like to see it opened up a little bit more and more of a random draw. But I really like the way that the Cup has gained interest. And I think you're going to see the benefit of that next year with how FC Cincinnati and Miami FC made those deep runs this year.
All right, Steve, I got one last question, and it's actually one of the questions we love to ask the beat writers around the league is, what is the soccer culture like in Kansas City? Because Mercy's Park is fantastic. The national team plays there. It seems to be an electrifying atmosphere.
It's huge, and it really turned the corner when they built this stadium, when they rebranded, when they moved in. I mean, there are always people who are diehard fans, and there are the people who went through the couple of years in the minor league ballpark, which is, always an interesting transition phase. But they opened it up here, and they've been a very fan-forward organization, very big on connecting with the supporters. I mean, you can't go around town without seeing sporting stuff everywhere. And I go back to the write-up I did the other day, or earlier this week, leading up to Open Cup final. I'm walking down the street in a neighborhood, maybe a couple 3 miles away from where Sporting trained, and somebody has stenciled on the sidewalk in spray paint, "We want the cup. Got to have that cup," in blue spray paint with an outline of the U.S. Open Cup. And just see how far it's come. Yeah, you can't go around town without seeing sporting stuff, seeing people in sporting shirts. Every bar you go to now that's considers itself remotely a sports bar, there's some kind of sporting swag hanging up there, and it's not just lip service. I mean, people see the game and they know the game. It's not like you're going to walk into the office and be the only one talking about soccer the way it used to be here. The ownership on Goal has really done a fantastic job of just really making the culture first rate, the stadium first rate, and the supporters again are crazy passionate about the club, and they've got a great academy system set up so you see kids all over the city wearing academy gear, the affiliate gear. So they've really gotten their roots deep into the culture and people love a winner. And they've been delivering that, success with trophies year in and year out, pretty much. So it's a fantastic soccer culture. I mean, they call it the soccer capital of America here, and I don't think they're off the mark.
No, absolutely, Steve. I mean, I kind of wish we had that. I wish I had that over here in the Dallas area. Yep. But on the show, Steve, we do something a shameless plug so people can find your work and follow you on social media. So where can we find you? Where can we find your work?
Shameless plug time. My work's on MLSsoccer.com. In fact, I'm just before too long, I'll have a piece out on Daniel Shalaway and his parents coming over to visit from Hungary while he's been enjoying tremendous success this week. So watch for that later on today. And if people want to look for soccer-related snark, among other things, on Twitter, they can just find me under my name, at Steve Brisendine, and you can find me either one of those places.
That's awesome. Steve, thanks again for joining us, and hope to talk to you down the road.
All right, thanks much.
That was a good interview, Steven.
Well, not
good
even
discussion.
Well,
good dialogue.
That, but one thing that struck me is what was really interesting is the stadium, because it's a soccer-specific stadium and it's a good stadium, people turn out for the club. That's a really interesting idea. I don't know. Maybe New England and Colorado and Dallas and Columbus and all these other cities that have terrible soccer stadiums, they could learn some from Sporting KC, because ever since they've stepped into that beautiful stadium, it's been nothing but success.
KC was on the verge of getting, I want to say, contracted at some point. They were god-awful. Their attendance was terrible. They had nothing, and they rebranded. And now look at them. The team's having success on the field and off the field and making a true impact within the KC community, which I find pretty awesome for a team that was struggling completely.
And the club seems to get it with the young talents moving through the ranks, with the ownership being stable. And the ownership being such Steve telling us, being such a fan-centered organization, I think is vital to the growth of soccer, especially in cities like a Midwest area. I mean, think about it. If the Hunts in Dallas or the Crafts in Boston, or is it Crikey with the Rapids?
Yeah.
If they were to invest into the fans, think about what type of market they could have. Dan Hunt could sell out Toyota Stadium easy. Kraft could have 30,000 show up at Foxborough, but no, it's really weird.
It is, and I think another key thing about SKC is they have storylines. As Steve was mentioning, Shalaway. A little story about Shalaway. I was talking to a buddy of mine who who really liked Shalaway. He told me the story about him, how he actually was a foreign exchange student coming into America, but he was so good that SKC was like, no, you're gonna have to stay here and you're gonna play for our academy. The story of Gerso, I mean, John Strong mentioned it on his broadcast today. It's on kansascity.com. Just look up Gerso on kansascity.com. It's by Sam McDowell. It's an unbelievable story about how he's an orphan and how he had to go through so much to his childhood to even play soccer, and now he's in his position. He loves it. They have incredible storylines, incredible players, incredible organization, and it's one of the model teams in MLS right now.
Alrighty, well, we got Dan Mattera, creator of Nats Abroad, joining us right now. How's it going, Dan?
Good. How are you guys?
We're doing great.
I'm well.
Doing great. Now we're going to change the conversation from MLS to Americans Abroad. And boy, was it a big week for
Huge week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got Weston McKennie making big waves at Schalke. That's a huge deal. He made his first start ever for the team in the league last week against Bayern Munich. Made another one this week. So big things there. Big guys coming back from injury. DeAndre Edlin, Fabian Johnson. So definitely some big stuff happening ahead of these World Cup qualifiers.
I'm going to ask you this: why do you think the Bundesliga seems to get a lot of Americans? You hear always about these German-American players. You hear a lot of Americans going to the Bundesliga. Why do you think it's such a hotbed for American soccer players?
I think it just has to do with, the cultural sort of ethos, I think, that the country has as a footballing nation or soccer nation. They generally have never really been the most, they're not Spain. They're not the most technical team in the world as a national team. But, just coming out of their academies, they have just a lot of gritty players, guys who, aren't afraid to run around and make a sort of a physical presence in the game. And I think that's what they see a lot in our younger players. Christian Pulisic, for example, and, Weston McKennie to an extent, they're quick. They're just, they've got their head down and they just kind of play the game. And that's what I think the German system is all about. And I think the Americans sort of follow that pretty well. So I think it happens that, there's interest there from them in our young players more so than other nations. So I think that's kind of why they gravitate towards there. And then it just becomes a snowball effect. You see a guy like Pulisic go there, and then, everybody else kind of feels more comfortable going there as well. So yeah, I think it's kind of a snowball from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also part of it has to do with the less stricter kind of work permit laws like they have in England. I know that can play a factor in a player signing too. But I do agree. I do think the Bundesliga does provide, and I think it is that snowball effect that you talk about. I mean, we saw Pulisic go there, then we saw McKennie go there. I mean, we've seen players such as Mackenzie Gaines also go there, and now we're seeing Josh Sargent signing with Werder Bremen this week. So I mean, I do think part of it is that snowball effect, and I think those players who do sign for these clubs, I think they embrace it. Kind of, they embrace trying to get more Americans to come to the Bundesliga.
I also think that the Bundesliga gives an opportunity to the youngsters. You don't necessarily hear the English league developing young players. I mean, all the big clubs, Arsenal, Bayern Munich, not Bayern Munich, but Chelsea, United, they don't necessarily dive into their academies as you do see with the German clubs. And I think that's a big motivation and a big reason why you do see these youngsters from America. I'm going to go to Bundesliga because you're more likely to get playing time. And that is the most crucial aspect to the development of a national team and to the development as an individual is getting playing time at the top, in the top leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect point. I think there's just so much emphasis placed on the development of youth. Even you look at a team like Borussia Dortmund, and their reliance on youth, even though they're probably considered the top 2-3 teams in Germany, they're still pulling guys on a regular basis every year out of their academy, and you're just never going to get that from a team like Chelsea or like you said, Manchester United or one of those guys. They're just going to dip into their pockets and buy somebody else.
I mean, Manchester United, with Rashford, you do see a couple break through, but Chelsea, they're not going to their youth academy. They're going to go out and spend the cash. City does the same thing, and it's a real shift in football and in the sport to see the transition into, well, you